My name is
Jenny,
David.
Cora,
Lila,
Laurel,
Jen,
Lisa,
Dino,
Ari,
Kyle.
I was a
Jehovah's Witness,
Jehovah's Witness.
FLDS,
in the Amish church.
the chosen people.
I was a Scientologist.
I grew up a Mooney, a member of the Unification Church.
2x2.
And I am
shunned.
shunned.
Sean.
Shunned.
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 Stunned.
Shunned.
My name is Micah. I'm 42 years old. I was a Jehovah's Witness, and I'm shunned.
All right, Micah, so how'd you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
I was born into it. My parents were first-generation Jehovah's Witnesses.
Okay. Is there like an origin story or something that you know where they met out, and certainly where did they come from in it?
So both of my parents came from families filled with trauma. I don't know much about, but my mother had two siblings die, one when they were 9, one at 14. Her mother died when she was 5. Her father was an alcoholic. Her grandmother lived with him, was an alcoholic as well. And my father was abused in every way. Even there is a large dump in Brooklyn, Indiana. And I guess he lived in there as a child, and like rats would crawl over him at night. But I was told in the 70s, once they were married, that they were looking for, the truth, the true religion, and Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on their door. And I believe it was the late 70s when they joined, because I was born in December 82. And by the time that I was born, I wasn't allowed to know my family on either side. The congregation was my family, but I really wasn't told much.
Well, I mean, you weren't told much, but doing this so often, you find that there's usually some sort of vulnerability. You have hurt people, and then Jehovah's Witnesses have this message, and then it's something that unfortunately hurt and vulnerable people are attracted to at times. And it's a very enticing thing to get love bombed, all the things that come along with it. And it feels like family, probably, for people who may be looking for it in new ways, because the place they come from is very harmful, or there's a lot of pain in that past. And so I'm very sorry that your parents both came, it sounds like, from a lot of trauma, and that this was the way of dealing with it or not dealing with it, depending on how you look at it. But probably doing their best. So they end up, somebody comes to the door, whatever, they end up becoming Jehovah's Witnesses. And then here comes Micah, 19, would you say 82?
Yeah.
So this is all you've ever known. So what was it like? What was the worldview that you were given growing up as a little JW kid? How'd you see yourself in relation with the world around you?
Well, my memory is pretty fragmented. Once I left and began writing and going through therapy, I have had I have PTSD flashbacks where I'll remember certain things, but my earliest memories are of going to book study and studying the Revelation book. I believe I was 6 or 7, and I was obsessed with the illustrations. I still think the illustrations are beautiful. They're done really well, but I would listen to people talk afterwards. And, I heard, and I was told that Armageddon would happen before I graduated high school. And I described my childhood as one of constant white knuckle paralytic terror. I was petrified. I would lay in bed at night afraid to close my eyes. And I would just obsess, because my mother told me that Jehovah's Witnesses would be tortured more than anyone ever had been in history. So I started getting books and reading about the worst torture I could find.
Trying to prepare?
Well, and then I'm laying in bed thinking, what's worse than being eaten alive by a lion? What's worse than being burned alive? These are the thoughts that I had as a very young child. And yeah, I was afraid. And I said I love Jehovah. I didn't. He seemed like a dick. And but then again, I remember asking my mother once when I was very young, I said, good for nothing slaves. Doesn't that seem a little harsh? And of course that was, slapped down. But yeah, I just kind of went along to get along, I guess.
Well, yeah, it's not a lot of other choice, and you're scared of the consequences of this. I mean,
Yeah.
um, growing up around the Revelation book, and the imagery there, and I can see where the imagery, like to some people, it was absolutely terrifying. I can see it being a mix of both. I can see it just being fascinating. I was always intrigued by the images as well. But I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses, they rule with fear, obligation, and guilt, and fear comes first, and
Yeah.
it's that and that. What it wasn't a fear of Jehovah. It was a healthy fear of displeasing him because he would murder you
Yeah.
in a
Because he
horrible
loves
way.
you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to grow up in. Would you describe it as something paralytic fear?
Constant white knuckle paralytic terror or fear.
Constant
Yeah.
white paralytic fear. Yeah, get that. And wow, that's a lot. Kids shouldn't be thinking about that, should they? You
No.
shouldn't be 5, 6, 7, 8 thinking about all the ways you could die in horrible,
Yeah.
tormented ways.
Yeah.
Certainly not normal, not healthy for sure. So let's talk about some of the environments that you grew up in. We all have a home life. We have some sort of a school life, even if that's at home, I don't know. And we have the Kingdom Hall itself. So let's just start with at home. So what was life like growing up in your home? What was the temperature of the room? Did you guys have a good time? Was it a tough environment? How was it for you guys?
So my father, he delivered mail, and he also would work side jobs. We had a nice double-story house. We had a deck off our second story that my father had built with people from the Kingdom Hall. Nice yard. And I would say I grew up maybe even high middle class. We had multiple cars. My mother was good about having a friend over for me most weekends. A lot of my friends had animals, and I was allergic to almost everything growing up. But I was an only child, so I would spend a lot of time, I guess, kind of entertaining myself, or drawing, playing with my action figures. And my mother was more the disciplinarian. I was whipped a lot. I was, smacked in the face. I was somewhat defiant, I guess. If I thought something was stupid or wrong, I felt a strong need to challenge it. And also, I don't know how much I did that as a very young boy. I think the older I got, the more awareness I got that came with it. But when I was young, basically, what was it? It was meeting 3 times a week. You had to prepare at least an hour for each of those meetings, 10 hours of service, and school. So in my free time, I pretty much just tried to, play video games, play with my toys, hang out with my friends. As horrible as it sounds, I still had good times, I guess, with my friends.
So can I ask, where did you find your friends? I'm assuming at the Kingdom Hall, because it's usually not allowed elsewhere, but
Yeah,
for you?
at the Kingdom Hall. My mother told me, I believe that everyone outside of Jehovah's Witnesses was controlled by Satan.
Yeah.
And even when I went to school, people would give me Valentines. I would throw them away. I would go out in the hall, for birthday parties or anything, holiday related, or during the Pledge of Allegiance, I would sit I never wanted to do those things. And I would feel bad. But, I mean, there's a loaded gun to your head. If you don't try and help them take a stand, God will kill them and kill you. And, I always hated that. And it never really made sense to me. I remember saying, like, well, can't the rocks preach? I didn't want to do it. And, people are, even as a child, I knew that people were suffering. So it never made sense to me that, they would say Jehovah's not slow to act, but he seems slow to act, But I also spent a lot of time alone, and I would really try and make sense of the things I was hearing at the meeting. I would really, not even questioning them, just trying to wrap my brain around some of the things.
So were you all the family that was at all the meetings? I mean, the way you said the 3 meetings a week and the 10 hours of service, like it sounds like you all were the ones hitting all the benchmarks.
So my mother and I, yes. My father didn't always. My father would get up early on Sundays and study his watchtower at McDonald's most weeks, and he would be there. But he liked to go to the gym. Like I said, he had he worked at what was it? It was a grocery store, Mr. D's. He would work part-time jobs. He went to college part-time. So I mean, I wouldn't say he was irregular. He just maybe didn't make as many as us. But yeah, we were pretty regular. I remember one time I was very sick, and I was told, no, you need to go to meeting. And then afterwards, we're going to go out to eat at Chi-Chi's. And I love Chi-Chi's, but I'm like, please, and I ended up vomiting all over the bathroom. So yeah, I usually was, I mean, I didn't really try and get out of meetings. I won't say I enjoyed them, but I did get to see my friends there. But yeah, we were pretty regular.
First, R.I.P. Chi-Chi's.
Yeah.
A lot of people miss that restaurant, I think.
So good.
Though you still buy their salsa, I think, right?
Oh, yeah, it was killer.
But yeah, that's a little hardcore. You're sick and you still have to go. But I mean, I think that was a lot of people's experiences. That's obviously why they would have to shut down the meetings during the height of COVID in 2020, because everyone would have gone sick. And it would have just spread like wildfire constantly to a largely older population, and it would have been absolutely horrific. But yeah, you just, the meetings kind of come first, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, your life is kind of orchestrated around them, your spiritual obligations.
Your life, even your friendships, like you said, right?
Yeah.
It was all with kids from the Kingdom Hall. So did you go to regular public school, or were you homeschooled, or some combo?
No, I went to public school because I remember hearing at meetings all the time that, that was the children's territory. I would beg and plead on my hands and knees and cry to not go to school. I despised going to school. I wasn't physically bullied, but verbally. I guess my father got in a fight when he was young and almost killed someone. He beat him like close to death, and they were in the hospital. So he told me it was important to control my anger, and but it kind of went too far, because I remember there was a guy who was like 5'1", and he would scream at me and how he was going to beat me up, and I just sit there, think, oh, I'm taking a stand from being long suffering, and I mean, I should have just been like, dude, shut up, or I'm gonna punch you in the top of your head. But yeah, it kind of I don't know. I hated school though, but yeah, that was what I did.
So were you, first of all, that term long suffering is absolutely one of the more horrendous terms Jehovah's Witnesses use. That's not an awesome life to be long suffering.
Yeah.
And I guess I would ask, so were you bullied just because, like, I was bullied because I was the skinny kid who made good grades, wore glasses, dressed terribly because my parents were poor Jehovah's Witnesses. I stood out like a sore thumb for many reasons, and I also had to be different, couldn't celebrate the holidays, had to go out of the classroom for the flag salute and stuff. So I was always the weird kid, and the weird kid sometimes attracts that. But I was also bullied at home, and I find that a lot of times kids that are bullied, it kind of starts at home at times. I'm not saying that's the case for you, but just where do you think the bullying came from, or why do you think you got it?
So I didn't get it so much when I was younger. It was more after my father's death, and then I became a lot quieter. But yeah, when I was very young, there was a kid. I was very skinny as a boy, and he kept sitting on me at recess, and so I think it was first or second grade, and I'm trying to be long suffering. And they had this log cabin we could crawl in. Well, the second or third time I'd had enough. So I got a handful of sharp rocks and I went and sat in the corner and he came in there and then I turned around and threw him in his face and he never messed with me again. So even a lot of times people tried to include me in things. But yeah, the bullying came more in high school after my father's death.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry that it happened after that too. The last time you don't need that on top of what you're going through at a time like that. So you yourself, you said you sat and thought about what you were being taught a lot, or you kind of tried to wrap your mind around different teachings and such. Did you take to it? Did you believe it as a kid? Did you ever enjoy, maybe going out in service because you thought you actually were saving someone, or giving a talk because maybe you got to, express some creative side of yourself or something? Was there any part of it there that you really identified with?
Yeah, I mean, I was an introspective child, and I did consider myself fortunate to have been born into the true religion. I couldn't say lucky because I'd be hit in the face, but I really didn't question it because my parents believed it, and that's, confirmation bias, but I did not enjoy going out in service. But then again, I was told I only did it enough to hate it, which is idiotic. But at the time, I didn't ever question that. I didn't really enjoy giving talks. So my son, as he's growing, he's 7 right now, and he looks just like me when I was a boy. But I'm remembering more and more about my childhood as he grows. And I recently had reacquired a memory of my first talk and how I disassociated. I think I was 7, and I remember I felt I was up and above myself, and my voice sounded like it was like all I could hear was vowels, and it sounded down the hall. But I had been told that Jehovah would send an angel to give me his Holy Spirit. So when it was over, that's what I thought had happened.
Oh wow. Yeah,
But
I see why you would think that. Yeah.
I did enjoy usually like when I started writing talks, where I could show a little bit more of myself. I would usually try and make people laugh. So I did enjoy that. I always liked doing creative things. And yeah, I liked when people would laugh, and say, oh, look at him. Isn't he cute or funny? I enjoyed that as a kid.
Well, yeah, it's kind of the only time you can get praise, right?
Yeah.
Or positive attention
Yeah.
is by doing things like that. So how did things go as you went into your teenage years? And feel free if there's any seminal moments or anything that we're missing here in your childhood that you want to throw out there. Feel free to fill something in there.
So when I was 12, I learned my father had cancer. And he also had a rare kidney disease. It was called IgA nephropathy. And so he had one surgery where they cut him from his navel halfway around, and then they did the other side. It looked like he'd been sawn and, cut in half. I'm 6 foot, but I'm the smallest male on the Losh side. My father was 6'2". He wasn't overweight, but he lifted weights. He was muscular and very broad in the chest and shoulders. But he would always want to eat before he went to chemotherapy, and he'd vomit for hours afterwards. I have really vivid memories of hearing him, retching in the basement. But so kind of from 12 to 13, everyone around me was, entering puberty and noticing, the opposite sex or whatever, I'm watching my father wither and die in front of my face. So there was a real distinction. And also, I mean, it gave me, I was far more mature than anyone else around me because I'm dealing with these really heavy issues. And people were patient and kind and helped, clean and bring us food and all of that. But then when he died, all of that stopped and I was expected to just move on, but I was forever changed. And, I did not receive sympathy, empathy, or compassion from my friends, from my mother, from the elders, from anyone except, a guidance counselor at school.
Oh man, I'm so sorry. I was thinking, they're good sometimes at showing up with the casserole, but no one ever asks how you are. Are you
Yeah.
okay? Maybe you just need somebody to sit with you or to go on a
Yeah.
walk with you or give you somebody to talk to. And it's all this surface level stuff, which is why, then they also prevent you from even grieving properly because it's like, well, what are you upset about? He's going to be resurrected, right? Or whatever. Like they don't allow you to feel your feelings, and they don't support you in the feeling of those feelings. It's
Well,
more just the performative stuff, and then it all goes away. If you're feeling stuck in your life after cult involvement and can't find the life you want, leaving a cult is a new beginning on a path to healing, not some magical end itself that is healing. Relief from the immediate pain feels good at first, but that's not necessarily true happiness. The feelings of social awkwardness and isolation, lack of self worth, perfectionism, patterns of being attracted to emotionally unavailable people, not even knowing who you are yourself, all of these things and more are lingering effects of that environment. Being in a cult isn't just following a doctrine, but it's following a culture, a way of life, a way of being that doesn't just go away because you stopped attending meetings. If you want to shortcut the path to healing instead of trying to figure it out on your own, maybe even work with me professionally in my cult recovery coaching practice, you can find opportunities to do that and also for other cool resources at my website, exjwhelp.com. That's exjwhelp.com.
yeah. Well, and I mean, I think that's by design because
Of course.
if you never leave, it's likely you'll never grieve, and
Sure.
I was angry. I was in pain, and not only, and of course, my anger was exacerbated by being told I needed to get over my father, my mother telling me her loss was greater than mine, and the things I connected with after that point were, Edgar Allan Poe, Stephen King, Metallica, Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn
Right.
Manson, and of course, that was all indicative of my sinful nature. And these people treated me like garbage. And they said one thing, but did another. And, anger is a stage of grief. And I cannot stand
Sadness.
when I hear even XJW say, don't be angry. I'm like, that person's a waste of your time. They're a cretin. That is a stage of grief. Do not allow anyone to disenfranchise you from that, But it kept me stagnating in grief. And of course, what do they say? The best thing for this is to draw close to Jehovah, but that never worked. And so I would my mother had me start going to therapy when I was 15, and of course that was what dad died in 96. So that would have been 98. So yeah, the society was not pro mental health at that time.
No.
I'm sure you recall that.
Oh, absolutely.
But every therapist I would go to would eventually suggest, have you ever thought about leaving Jehovah's Witnesses? And I would stop going because I believe that was Satan trying to draw me out.
Well, that's what you were told.
Yeah.
Right? You're told that from the platform.
So my mother would, have me locked in like stress centers for like against my will for like 3 days, 7 days. telling me I need this. But at the same time, I can't tell them I should be happy because I'm in the true religion, because I know how insane that sounds, even though I believe it. So it was just this, it was just like being discharged from those places, being readmitted, and going in and out of elder meetings. And eventually, I think I tried to electrocute myself. I think it was we brought my father home to die. So I would have been 13. That was the first time I tried to kill myself. Because I just wanted to be asleep and be brought back with him, and
which is where those teachings can be very harmful.
Yeah. And so after his death, so when I was 16, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. And of course, over those 3 years, she's been complaining to me that I haven't taken the lead spiritually. It was like after my father's death, like after the funeral, I was just supposed, like, it was insane. I was just supposed to just take on more responsibility.
You're a child who lost his father.
And a piece of garbage because I'm not spiritually strong. Yeah. So, I started vandalizing things. My friend and I, when I was driving, I had an old Buick. I would hit portalets in the middle of the night and send them flying.
Those feelings needed somewhere to go, didn't they?
Yeah. And it kind of, culminated in one night after book study. I was arrested for hitting mailboxes. My friend and I, we were driving down streets, hitting them with bats and stuff. And then there was a car chase with a cop, and, so we get put in a paddy wagon. And of course, if my son did that, what are you doing? But no one said, hey, are you okay? Are you in pain?
That's the first question. Hey, why are we doing this? What's going on?
And the thing that was really interesting was, so part of the rehabilitation was, of course, we paid restitution, but we had to meet with people who we had vandalized their property. And you would talk about walking into a room of people that hate you, right? So everybody goes around the room and they're talking, and there's this little old couple, and they said that they almost hadn't come because they were afraid my friend Logan and I would come and hurt them afterwards. But they said their grandson had been involved with a gang and had died. And man, I just started crying, I hadn't thought about these people having to fix anything. I still maintain that was it's one of the funnest things I've ever done. It was dumb, but it was fun, but when it was over, they hugged us and they said, you're good boys who made a mistake. They humanized us. But I never really thought about it until years later because, of course, they were worldly. Well, then I met with the elders who told me that, I had shamed my father, my mother, and Jehovah. And if any of those people or the police rejected the truth, I'd be blood guilty and killed at Armageddon.
Wow, what a difference in responses.
Yeah.
They even brought your dad into it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's disgusting.
And I was terrified I'd be disfellowshipped. I ended up, we were publicly reproved, and then there was a local needs a few weeks later about, I don't know, I think it was bringing reproach on Jehovah's name. So, really, I say my life just got worse for 37 years straight. So I began, that was when I began binge eating. By the time I was 18, I weighed 300 pounds and I was suicidal. And I told my mother, I said, I don't want to live anymore. And she said, you need to speak to the elders. So, and I already knew, I'd been in a couple small, because I would feel guilt if I watched an horror movie or listened to a song with profanity, or downloaded a picture of a naked woman. So, I would tell on myself because, you think you're killing the whole congregation, even though they were increasingly becoming nastier and nastier to me. So the elders said no. They refused to meet with me. They didn't believe me, and they thought that I just wanted attention. So we switched congregations, but in my mind, these are Jehovah's spirit anointed people. So I never believed that Jehovah cared about me because they rejected me, and that rejection clearly came from his Holy Spirit. So I fell into a really deep depression for a long time. I mean, it ebbed and flowed a little, but I became a regular, and I was disfellowshipped for the first time when I was 23. I had a girlfriend at the Kingdom Hall. I stayed overnight with her, and I guess it would be pornea. I didn't sleep with her, but I felt guilt. So I went to the elders, and they told me they didn't believe that I hadn't had sex with her. And which I remember.
Don't they need two witnesses?
Yeah.
Why all of a sudden do they not need witnesses to something?
Yeah. But, I don't know. And I remember thinking but I didn't sleep with her. So but maybe, I'm just so evil that this is what I deserve.
Yeah, of course.
So I went to the Kingdom Hall. I sat there while they disfellowshipped me. And I lived with my mother at the time. And after 18 months, I finally was reinstated, but I think I had to submit 2 or 3 because my first letter
about letters of reinstatement.
Yes.
Yeah, they're not going to let you in the first time. You've got to grovel. They've got to break you down even farther and make you.
Well, my first letter, I said, you people treat me like garbage. You ignore me.
Right, Micah?
And I said, there's no difference between me being disfellowshipped and not. And I've come to meetings, so that's indicative of my repentance. Well, that wasn't good enough. So it was either the second or third time I Googled, how do I write a letter to get reinstated? And I must have found some apostate template that was complete crap, typed it up. They ate it up. They loved it. We've never seen you like this, and they reinstated me.
Jehovah's Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Or Google.
Jehovah's hand. Yeah.
Not to totally derail, but can I ask, when were you baptized? Because you got all this going on as a kid with your dad and your mom. There's so much going on there. When did you have time or mental capacity to do that?
So I was baptized less than 4 months after my father's death. I was told, I needed to make a stand to make sure I was there. My father would want to see me again.
Who told you that?
My mother, the elders, pretty much everyone.
Again, vulnerability being used.
Yeah.
Bringing people in.
The only reason I know that is because a year or so ago, I was going through things, and my mother got me a bracelet with my baptism date on it. And that's the only reason, because there was so much trauma and pain, it's absurd. I was in no condition. A 13-year-old's in no condition to make that decision anyway, but certainly I wasn't,
not right after your dad dies. Pressure for you to be the spiritual man of the house and such.
It was
the wrong kind of attention. That you didn't need that kind of attention. You needed love and hugs, probably.
Yeah, which that just wasn't there. The friend who I got arrested with, he was the only friend of mine who would let me talk about his dad. I remember his brother told me I needed to get over my dad, and I could only use it as an excuse to be sad for so long. Meanwhile, he has both his parents and siblings, and
An excuse to be sad. Like that, just that phrase. Like
yeah,
you
I
need
mean,
an excuse. There has to be a reason that to validate that you have a feeling in the view of Jehovah's Witnesses. They're
we,
so
you,
judgmental and cold.
yeah, you serve the happy God, and of course,
Why is the happy God always killing people?
yeah, I mean, I guess genocide makes him happy,
I
but
guess so. Whatever.
well,
Float your boat.
and I've learned since leaving, that cult members have to be walking, talking advertisements for the group to draw in others. So I understand why I was rejected, because I began, well, of course, and when I began putting on weight, I would wear a lot of black, and I'm getting called into the back room. Why are you wearing all black? Well, because I like it. And that would continue after I was reinstated the second time. I really tried. I was like living like the cleanest JW life ever, and it just didn't matter. Nobody. So
because there's no depth there. There's nothing really there to attach to. It's
yeah.
like you said, fear. Where's
Well,
the love in this place?
and even like people, like I would see them, I would look them in the eye and say hi. I would know they heard me. They'd turn and walk away. They wouldn't acknowledge me. When I would go to the elders, I would be told, are you extending yourself enough? Are you putting yourself out there? But like,
It's all your fault, Micah.
yeah. I spent one time, or one time I thought, because I knew something was wrong, but everyone was telling me it was me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I'm going to see how long I can go without calling anybody, talking to anybody, texting anybody. And I took a whole year of my life and no one spoke to me. But around that time, that was when I got my first tattoo. So I have 20 tattoos and I got 19 of them as a Jehovah's Witness. And they were not hidden. I didn't care. When people, if they were offended, I said, if Jehovah has a problem with them, he can remove them in paradise. It's under the Mosaic law. They also, when I was disfellowshipped that first time, I worked at this warehouse, and a lot of people there really liked me. They would ask me to hang out. And while I was disfellowshipped, I would spend time with them some. About halfway through, when I was like seriously trying to go back, I stopped doing that, but I even that was the first time I performed stand-up comedy. I was asked to host this event with a bunch of rap groups because this guy worked with Nathan. He said, "You're pretty funny, man. You should do this." And I was like, "Oh, okay, right on." So they made this flyer and put hosted by up and coming comedian Micah Allen Losh, and everything I read said, like, you're going to fail at this. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that's fine. But how many people can say they did that,
Yeah.
So it went fairly well, which surprised me. And even one of the bands had a manager there who said, like, hey, I can get you some gigs and you can maybe tour with us. But, I said, no, I'm going back to my former faith. Yet again, I think this is Satan trying to draw me out, right? Instead of realizing that I had like connected with people and they, saw me and liked me.
Make you push away actual support. You finally have people seeing you and being like, hey, I like you and I like what you stand for, what you do. They make you push that away.
Yeah. And, after and around that time too, that was when I began like painting and making art, and because I couldn't talk about really what had happened. And I jumped over this too. So after my father's death is when I began writing. I wrote my first poem about him, and I had done that. I continued to do that actually my whole time, but anytime I would show like my art to Jehovah's Witnesses, they'd find it off-putting, or my mother would tell me to throw away the things that I had written. So, there was this absolute rejection of who I was inside. And, even I had some of my paintings like displayed in some coffee shops. I was offered like a display in downtown, but I turned that down. And yet again, like I found people who liked like who I authentically was, but I rejected them or pushed them away, even though I didn't want to, because they dangled my dead father in front of me like a carrot, So, and I even thought like when I came back that first time, like, oh, maybe I'll finally be rewarded and just like treated decent, But of course that didn't happen. And yeah, so from like 23 to 33, that was just that was a really dark decade of my life. I just was non-entity as a Jehovah's Witness. There were times I even questioned my own existence. So all I could,
there's times I questioned my own existence.
yeah, I mean,
This unperson that they make you as
Yeah.
a shunned individual. During that decade, were you disfellowshipped a lot of the time, or were you
no,
were in, or
I was reinstated at 23
and
or
still
maybe 20.
felt
Yeah.
that invisible?
Yeah. So even when I came back, and sorry, I only slept about 4 hours, so I'm telling this story like it's a weave, but it's all
Well, it's a
connected.
lot to tell anyway, and there's a lot of ins and outs that all connect. So
Another thing too, but the internet chat rooms, I got on MSN Messenger when I was a teenager, and I would find like the Nine Inch Nails chat room, Slipknot, music that I liked, and then I could connect with people. And even I met this girl when I was a boy, or I was 17, and she was from New Zealand, but we connected really well. And she was actually because when I started sharing my writing online, I was getting positive feedback. I was active on DeviantArt back in the day.
oh
I don't
wow,
even
yeah.
I don't even know if that still exists.
I don't know.
Yeah, and but so she complimented my writing, and she told me she liked that I expressed myself in a succinct way. And yeah, I used to write her like emo love poems. I called her my muse, and I wanted to go meet her. I had a mic. I had sent her like little audio messages, and she had sent me a few pictures. And so even when I was 21, because we spoke from 17 to 21, I wanted to go meet her, and I told my mother, and of course my mother put the kibosh on that. And a few weeks later, when I turned 21, I overdosed on sleeping pills, and died and was in a coma. um I had I woke up and I was screaming involuntarily as my body was shutting down. It was a very bizarre feeling. But so I got up and I was stumbling down the hall. I just couldn't sit still. And my mother heard me, and like I collapsed on the floor, and then I couldn't move my limbs. And then the paramedics arrived, and 37 hours later, I woke up strapped to a bed, with a ventilator and everything. So that also didn't help, because, people would be very cruel to me and call me insane, or a freak. And, yeah, so, but and I kept trying to make it work, and I really just I was tired of hearing the same crap in the meetings, like be nice to people. Like, I mean, day one shit. This needs to be explained, and I really began to feel contempt for them, and especially after being reinstated and working so hard to come back, along with everything else. Um, so that, yeah, like when I would get called into the back room, and they would ask me things like, oh, well, why are you wearing all black? I'd be like, well, what's the problem with that? Tell me how black is related to Satan. And I'd be like, well, we have black congregation members. You must hate that. Let's run them out. And they'd be like, oh, we don't mean that, But I began to become very confrontational. And I, you know, I,
Well, yeah, you're going to
everybody has
become somewhat of a provocateur at a point because,
it's asinine.
well, but it's also like part of you, I think, probably finding your voice and actually being a person. Because between 23 and 33, you described yourself almost as this like non-existent entity, this unperson. But you had already tried to unperson yourself a couple times, unfortunately. And it's all because you're being rejected as a person over and over again. Meanwhile, pushing away the very people who actually accept and love you as the person you are. It's this backwards JW way of being where you end up pushing away all the good things in your life and you're stuck with them and you feel terrible. So, I mean, I can understand you're going to hit mailboxes and maybe have something to say occasionally because you're trying to be a person among people who don't want to see you.
Yeah. And, it was just like, I used to tell them, I'd say there's a real anti-Micah barrier oh no, there's not, and I'm like, and I'm thinking like, I know, like, I mean, they look you in the eye and they lie to you, or they'd say like, well, so, it just went on and on like that. So when I was 33, this nurse that I worked with at the nursing home, she started asking me about my beliefs and said she wanted to come to the Kingdom Hall. So, okay. And the congregation love bombed her, they loved her. But of course they hated me. And when they found out that, we, had interest in each other, then everyone was offended that she was spending time with me. Now, these people don't care if I commit or attempt suicide. They don't care if I cut myself, all of these things. But if someone's nice to me, that offends them. So I became very, very angry. And we were pulled into a back room and told we couldn't speak to each other except after meetings. Now I'm 33 and she's 27.
And you work together, right?
Yeah. And, and I was like, show me where this is scriptural. And they're like, it just can't be what it is. And just these smarmy, arrogant, condescending pricks. And so, yeah, I ended up moving in with her and I got disfellowshipped a second time. And now, so the first time I was disfellowshipped, I still lived with my mother, right? Now, we didn't talk about spiritual things, but I still had, So now in my mind, I've rebelled against God for this woman, which I think you'd be hard pressed to find something more romantic than that. And once we elope about a month after we lived together, because it's like, we need to make things right, because she was studying and going to meetings and all of that. So the day we get married, we had planned to tell her family we were married, and she said she didn't want to do it. And I just knew she would never tell them, and she never did. And about a year and a half after that, my stepson let it slip that I was his stepfather, but I had been drunk every day. I didn't have family. I didn't have friends. And this woman who I loved is telling me I have to take my ring off, my wedding ring. And I was just completely broken. So I just decided I'm going to be drunk every day until I die or Armageddon. Like I could not, I just couldn't handle anymore. She's never explained why, except I guess just cowardice. not able to stand up. I mean, I would say, why did you marry me? I told her every day you don't tell them I love you less. And I did. And eventually I just despised her, but of
Oh
course I
yeah,
could.
how can you not tell? I don't understand. How do you marry somebody and not tell your family you're married to them?
I don't know. I mean, she's been married and divorced before, so it seems like she's an expert on it, but
Hmm.
I don't know.
Well, she was attracted to Jehovah's Witnesses, so clearly she had her own vulnerabilities. There were some things that were unhealthy there as well,
Yeah,
as exhibited here as also
yeah.
in the marriage.
Well, and I think I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, we don't have. I mean, we text civilly about
Sure.
when I need to get my son, but I've never been given answers. I think she just joined for me. I'm not here to speak poorly about her. But yeah, it was very painful. And I put it to bed now, but for years, it was, I mean, I don't, even when I went to therapy, they were like, oh, that's really abusive and cruel,
Well,
and,
yeah, and
and I didn't
join
really
a religion
realize.
because of you, but then not tell her family about you.
Yeah.
Um,
So I
Again,
was,
you want people in your life who support you, who are proud of you, and who want to tell the world about you. And your
yeah,
whole life, it seems like, I mean, no wonder you're drinking here. I mean, no one's treating you. Where's the wind beneath Micah's wings? Seems
yeah,
like everybody is just kind of trying. Every time you find someone who's nice to you, you have to you have to push them away, and everybody else that you're with in the organization is treating you again like that unperson. What's the
yeah,
point?
yeah. Yeah, because I remember like going to a therapist at one time, and they were like, "You have low self-esteem," and I was like, "I mean, not." I said, "I don't." I said, "I have low esteem for others," but I said, "I mean, I think I'm a good person. I'm interesting. But everyone I'm around just treats me like garbage. And of course, I didn't realize at the time, it was the environment. So I was disfellowshipped, I think, 2 years and 7 months the second time. And even I went to I think I got disfellowshipped at one congregation, and we switched to the other congregation that was shared in that building, right? And that was when I began to realize like these declarations of unity are not true, because I'm writing letters to the new congregation asking to speak with the old elders, and they won't give them to them. And then eventually I find out that they're supposed to, and they're supposed to decide. And then that elder's telling me, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm like, look, this is just what I'm hearing, right? So I submitted letter after letter after letter. And even I thought I was going to get reinstated. I don't remember which letter it was, but my family and I had gone to, it was called PopCon, like pop culture convention, right? And we had done like a family Fallout cosplay, and we had fake guns, my stepson and I. And I was told I couldn't be reinstated because of that, because I was a lover of violence. And I was like, you people own guns. I was like, you're a bunch of hicks who own guns. I had a fake gun. And they said, well, because I wore my Bane mask as well. They said, what do you think it says about you when you dress up like a Batman villain? And I was like, that I'm a nerd. Like, and they said, well, why couldn't you dress up like Batman? I said, oh yeah, because he brutalizes people and beats them, but doesn't kill them except in some versions. Like, what are we even talking about here? And so I knew I wasn't going to get reinstated. And we also had an elder who was extremely overweight. And I said, you want to tell me he's a man of modest habits? Give me a break. I was like, you guys are just cherry picking. And so I said, I'm going to leave before you have to eat through a straw. And I got, and I like shoved the table when I got up and walked out. Now, of course, they made me apologize, because they were gifts and men and glorious ones. And So I swallowed my pride, and eventually I was reinstated. But I think the last meeting that I got reinstated, like, I was pretty drunk at it too. People told me they could never tell I was drunk, but I mean, I had drank right before, because I lived like right across the street, and it was just so frustrating. It was so petty and so ridiculous, right? And even I remember I said, I don't even know why I'm trying to do this to one of the elders, and he said, well, if you don't want to come back, like, I mean, I think they didn't want me back. Because I was kind of a provocateur and an instigator, right? So,
But you also, you mentioned that therapist saying something about your self-esteem. And you may have thought highly of yourself in some ways or appreciated things about yourself. But I would imagine what they were seeing was this continually chasing these people who are just emotionally unavailable
oh
and who
yeah,
honestly don't deserve you, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
Because that's the JWA, right? We chase this
yeah,
emotionally unavailable God all the way to
yeah,
the elders, to the governing body, to our own families at times. It's just constantly chasing, trying to get something from people who don't have it to give. They just treat
yeah,
us like crap.
yeah. I mean, it's to quote the Bible, it's striving after the wind. It is an
Yeah.
exercise in futility.
Yep.
So, I think after we were married, like a year, my son was born, and here's another thing. I mean, my life has a lot of near misses in it, but so they used pitocin to induce labor with my ex-wife, and she had gestational diabetes. So he came out, and he was, they were tending to her, and then 7 minutes after he was born, they said he's not breathing. And
Mm.
I never wanted to have kids because I was afraid. I always felt like I was cursed, and also I didn't want to die on them. Like had happened with my father. So they say, okay, we're going to fly him by helicopter to the children's hospital and down, because he was born in Franklin. And so they flew him down here to Indianapolis. And now this was before I got reinstated, and my mother was at the hospital, and she drove me because I was in no condition to drive. And on the way there, she's telling me I need to deny him blood if they say he needs it. And like the night my son is born, my mother told me to let him die. And she tried to get a liaison committee to calm down. And so I called my ex-wife to talk to her about it because I knew she wouldn't hear it. And she hung up on me. And I was like, look, I'm not going to do anything without her approval. And, it's a respiratory issue. Like, I'll deal with that bridge when it comes, So luckily he was only in there, 7 days, came out, he's healthy now. But yeah, that was a really, and I remember the first time I looked at him, I thought, if he's gay, I can't love him.
Mm.
That should not be a parent's first thought when they look
No.
at their child, But I mean, I think that shows the complete domination they have over people when they're willing to let their children die the night they're born.
Well, yeah, that's it. A lot of people are like, "Well, how can Jehovah's Witnesses, how could you just shun your kid, or how could you deny them blood, or whatever the case may be?" I mean, the very fact that these people can go against basic human values
Yeah.
shows that they must be up against something pretty powerful to make them disown their child or let them die. Um, it shows something about them. And then really, there's just a lack of, we always focus on the detachment, but there's just a lack of attachments. And it's
Yeah.
because this thing's in the middle.
Yeah. And so, after I was reinstated, I mean, my wife's still was going to meetings. Even she was going to meetings more than I was, a lot. And I mean, I was just like, as soon as I would like lay out my clothes for work the next day, cook. I like to cook. I'd cook for my family most nights, get the boys ready. But, I just drank at night. I was just always drunk. And like, eventually, when I was drinking like 24 beer a night, and then I went to vodka, and then I went to bourbon, so my drinking kept escalating. Right. And then, of course, working at the nursing home, and I was in a car wreck when I was 23. So I'm having more and more pain. So I ended up getting put on Vicodin and gabapentin, and I'm drinking on top of those, which I'm not supposed to be, but I am. And then COVID happens, right? And I mean, I thought that was Armageddon, and I was terrified. Now, my ex-wife is a nurse. I worked in a nursing home, so we were both essential, right? So, I mean, that was an extremely stressful time. And years earlier, I had told an elder about that when I was 30, two men that I grew up with in the same summer killed themselves, and nobody cared. It was just, that's what happens when you distance yourself from Jehovah. And of course, I'm very suicidal, so I knew that's what it would be when I killed myself. And my mother had told me to talk to the elder, to talk to this one elder who he would routinely mispronounce words, just a dumb hick, does concrete, just, dumber than a second coat of paint. Why would I ask him for advice on anything? But I did, and I told him I was suicidal, and he mocked me. I remember he was eating while he talked to me on the phone. I could hear him chewing too. And, he tells me my life is easy. I have nothing to complain about. So when COVID happened, I don't know, like I was still angry about that. And I thought, like, well, if Armageddon's going to come, I should maybe, try and be peaceable, with my brother, and trying to apply the fruitages of the Spirit. So I called him. He said he had never said that. And I was like, you liar. And I hung up on him. Well, he called back and he called me. He said, hang up on me, boy. So I said some pretty nasty things to him, which they're in my memoir. And I told him, like, you want to call me boy? Here's my address. Come say it to my face, So he told my mother that I threatened to kill the entire congregation. And I told her, I said, well, I'm not stupid. If I wanted to kill a group of people, I'm not going to be like, hey, next Tuesday at 5, I'm going to kill you.
Call my shot. Yeah.
And so she was like, oh, that's really great. She said, they've never had a Jehovah's Witness act this way. They had to call Bethel, so, that stuck with me that she told me that, evidently I'm like the top tier worst Jehovah's Witness. Right. And so she blocked my number. And, even I remember my father died in May. Like, I tried to talk to her. I was drunk, crying. She blocked me. I was just spiraling, devastated. Like, I just need like compassion, but I never, and I had no coping skills. So we went to the memorial on Zoom, but we weren't going to the regular weekly meetings. And so I started getting on the Ex-Jehovah's Witness Reddit page. And now to do that, I have to get damn near blackout drunk because I feel like there are demons around me. And I'm just so conflicted, so frightened, and so confused. And I can't tell anybody I'm on there. I don't comment, And I'm just discovering, like, the thing about like what is it? The United Nations, because, I grew up, my earliest memories are of the Revelation book. So that's
the wild beasts.
Devastating to me, right? Like every time it's just like, oh, like what? But then again, can I trust this? So I keep drinking and I keep drinking and I keep drinking, and I wake up in jail. And that was interesting. That was during COVID, so everything was slowed down, right? I eventually, when I was moved to like a block, of course, I have a lot of tattoos. I have a shaved head. And when I go in the cell block, I'm like the biggest guy in there, and I hear people talking and I'm like, oh, this is not what I want or need. I don't want to be king of the cell block, and I don't want to fight these people, but I'm not going to let anybody walk over me. But nothing happened to me in jail. I stuck to myself. I read. I drew pictures for my son and letters and mailed them to him. And I wrote a letter to my mother, and I said, hey, I've been drunk like every day for 7 years. And, I was like, I should probably, get treatment for that maybe. And I apologized, if I had been difficult and all this stuff. Well, I was called one day. They come in and they're like, you have a digital court. And I'm like, oh. And so I heard my mother, she filed a no contact order against me. And I heard her, talk to the judge. She painted me as this monster. And he asked me, he said, you are not allowed to speak to your mother. Do you understand me? You're not allowed to Snapchat her, which like I'm Snapchatting my mother. And I just said, I have no issue speaking to her ever again. So I go back to the cell block, and I'm trying to figure things out, because I know that my mother is going to try and draw my wife and the boys deeper into Jehovah's Witnesses and cut me out, right? So I had a public defender. I had no way to get access to my money. My ex-wife did send me like some money for commissary, but I couldn't get like enough to hire anyone. And I mean, jail's a nightmare. I mean, it's set up for you to fail, like it's no wonder people reoffend. It's ridiculous. And and of course, everybody, all these people are talking about how they, are doing hardcore drugs and can't stop. And that just, I don't know. I didn't feel, I'm not saying I didn't belong there, but I just didn't feel like, I didn't understand them, like they're talking about doing these horrible things and like having no remorse and laughing over it. And it's like, yeah, I don't understand this at all. So when I go to court and the plea bargain in front of me, I realize that I'll be homeless if I sign it. I can't go back to my apartment. But I'm like, it's okay. I can live in my Mustang, right? So I sign it. Like I lost 14 pounds in 77 days. I was holding my pants up running back, right? Because my apartment was like a 10-minute walk maybe. And when I get back, I realized that, or I learned that my car has been repossessed. So I'm homeless, no car, no job during COVID. And I have about $60 in my wallet.
Ooh,
so
that's tough. Where do you go? Because nobody wants anyone during COVID, right?
Yeah. So I had texted a woman I had worked with. She would move to Florida, and I said, because my family was gone that first night, so I'm staying, or I'm in, my home that I can't live in anymore. And I'm like, I don't know what to do, and there's no one I can call. So I texted her and I was like, I'm homeless. I should just jump off a bridge. I don't know what to do. So she calls the police on me and tells them that I'm suicidal. So I hear a knock at the door, and I'm not a fan of law enforcement. I've smarted off to them before. I go into that in my memoir again. And they're like, you need to come with us. And I'm like, look, I haven't seen my son in 77 days. All I want to do is see him. I'm not suicidal. He'll be back in the morning. And of course, the pieces of garbage handcuff me, drag me out, drive me up to Indy, put me in a hospital and I was livid. I'm screaming at the security because they're treating me like I'm violent and a monster. And they're, oh, let's come up with a plan. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure I was in a cult. I have no community, no friends. No, I'm divorced. No, what's the plan? Like, let me out of here right now. And so the next day they drive me off to Franklin or back up. They hired like a Lyft and released me to be homeless. So I crawled under a bridge, like close to where my son lived, because I thought like, well, at least I could still be close to him. And I remember like when I went under, I looked like where will bugs bite me the least? Where could I make a little home, right? And I've never felt fear like that ever. It was transformative. It reminded me of something I read of an ancient Stoic. He was traveling by ship and it sank, and all of his possessions are sinking, and he's just floating, and just realizes there is no power. Power and control are illusions, you know. And there was profound liberation in that, but also it's terrifying, right? And I thought for a minute, I was like, man, I don't want to feel this. Like, I wanted to get drunk for a minute, but I told my son I'd never drink again. So I didn't. And it was like, so it was rough. I after 3 days, I called this halfway house, and they told me they would let me, come down there and see about being admitted. So I was admitted, and now, of course, they're telling me like, well, you have to clean up after yourself. Yeah, okay. I was a Jehovah's Witness. That's no issue. Yet again, it's day one shit that is just incomprehensible to me that adults can't handle. There was a meeting early on. They were like, hey, guys, it's not okay to have sex out by the dumpster with women. And I was like, yeah, let's put that on a long list of things that never do. It's nasty. And they're like, oh, you think you're better than us? And I'm like, well, evidently. I mean, like what? I don't understand this, right? So they tell me that that I'm an addict, and I was born an addict, and I have a spiritual malady. So I read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous 3 times. Most of the people I've met in AA can't even read. And they were like, well, it's hard to understand. I don't think so. If you don't know the words, maybe you should look them up. That's how you grow. Yeah. So, the big book is talking about predestination, which I don't believe in. Well, I don't see any evidence of it either, and so I'm asking questions, right? And I'm told, you think too much. You need to submit. You need to focus on service. You can only keep what you have by giving it away. Ooh, a lot of thought terminating cliches, right? And so it's just it's. I'm thinking, why does this feel so familiar? I mean, it's different, but it's very familiar, and that is a big problem for me. And of course, they're telling me I'm planning a relapse. Now, I don't want anybody to do heroin. I don't want these people that are telling me these catastrophic, horrible stories or saying they've lost custody of their kids. I don't want that for them. But I think what I'm hearing is horseshit. But yet again, these people cannot hear me, and they're acting like I'm so evil, right? So another thing AA says, if you do not accept that AA is, gospel, you're a dry drunk, even if you don't drink. Shaming term. And they told me that I suffered from terminal uniqueness. No. So I'm sitting in these meetings because it's during COVID. So we're doing 8, 10 AA meetings a day in the same room with maybe 5 people some days because you can't go anywhere. And, a quote I love is, activity is the enemy of thought. All I want to do is sit and think about my past. I sat with the person who ran this place and I cried. I said, look, I don't know if my mind has been warped by demonic influences or if I was in a cult. I really need to. I don't know even how to figure that out, but I need to. You want to feel special. No, I don't want to have been in a cult, So I really felt contempt for it. And then, I'm sitting there in meetings with people talking about their higher powers, pick your own delusion, right? And, I know things about myself. I know that I'm determined. I like we've talked about, I know that I did stand-up comedy. That's a terrifying thing. Most people are like, that's crazy. I know that I've displayed my art. I know that I have connected with people with my writing. I know these things about myself. I know I lost over 100 pounds. I know I can put my mind to something, and they're telling me I'm just trash, that I'm just a useless addict, and I'm sick of being denigrated. So I began mocking them. They'd be saying, "Oh, well, my higher power is," I say, "Oh, well, yes, Jesus turned water into wine, therefore he's pro-alcohol. Paul told Timothy to have a little wine. All scripture is inspired and beneficial for teaching, reproving, and setting things straight." So, yeah, but. And they hated me yet again. I was in one meeting, and they're like, "Let's talk about our higher powers." And they asked me what mine was. And I said, "Well, I'm torn between Santa and Satan. I just feel like the hottest girl at the prom, Meanwhile,
you switched the letters. Santa and
yeah.
Satan.
Meanwhile, I'm not drinking, and these people can't stop doing drugs, but they're saying that God has them and they're God, So that was when I got online and I looked up, because the only things I kept were I have shared custody of my son, right? Because my ex-wife filed for divorce while I was in a halfway house too. I didn't drink, people were doing drugs in there. Yet again, nobody said, oh, they also forced me to cook for everybody that night too, because I just wanted to lay in bed and sleep. No, you need to get out of yourself. I mean, no compassion, bereft of empathy. So I had shared custody of my son. I had some of my clothing, a few things, and my laptop. And so I get on my laptop. After a month there, you got your phone and laptop back full time. And I find everything I've written from 13 to 37. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, I can tell, I was kind of playing with asking questions, but I'm hiding these questions and exploring them in art, in a safe way in case it's discovered. And I begin remembering, oh, this is who I was. This is when I felt the most alive, and so then I got online and I looked up what are all the tactics of a cult, and I copied them and I didn't read them. And then when I read them, I'm like, I'm going to sit with these thoughtfully and consider how many of them match every single one. It was like it was written about my childhood. And then I discover logical fallacies and I go through those, and my thinking is filled with them. Right. So yet again, they're telling me I need to be working on my sobriety. And to me, it's like, no, I gave up drinking. I don't care about it anymore. But they're telling me every day, and they're the ones who are obsessed with it, right? I mean, they're the dead and hopeless. Ugh.
AA is the addiction to replace the addiction to alcohol to some degree, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, it is a cult. It's repackaged Buckmanism. It's the moral rearmament movement. It's delusional. And I mean, people would say, well, people have stopped drinking. It's not a cult. I know people whose lives improved by becoming Jehovah's Witnesses. You can
people
join the
stop
cult.
drinking because of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, causation, not correlation, all these things.
Sure.
I'm discovering all these for the first time, and I'm like, man, all of these instances in my life, and I'm questioning more and more. And then, excuse me, I said, you know what? I always wanted to write a book. I'm gonna tell my story. Oh, you don't want to do that. Don't ever tell me what I want to do. You don't want to speak out against Jehovah's Witnesses. Yes, I do.
Who told you that?
Oh, people in AA, they told me to stay in my lane. Oh yeah. Now, not all of them, but of course, this is the Bible Belt, and every meeting. But I mean, I could go on and on about. There are countless similarities, and so I got thrown out of that first place because I said I didn't. They're like, you need to pick a higher power. No, I don't. what happened to self-reliance and determination? I do not need a higher power. Oh, you think there's, nothing more powerful than you? I'm like, that's nonsense. That doesn't make sense. Like, a gorilla is more powerful than me. Am I going to give it control of my life? So I get thrown out, and I'm in an even worse place. It was ran by a mob informant. He's the son of the former head of the Colombo crime family. He was outed at an AA meeting. I mean, it's insane, right? Like, I shared a cannoli with him once. And I felt like I was in Sopranos.
Okay.
So, like, people are smoking crack on the porch there. The room I moved into, it had hardened vomit all over the floor. It was horrific. I refused to have my son come visit me there. And so I get offered this job at the bar that I work at. And people are like, yet again, you don't want to work at a bar. I'm like, they're offering me more money than I've ever made. And like, I've been in jail. At the time, I'm on probation. This is a good opportunity. Oh, are you planning a relapse? No, I'm planning to repair my life. Even other people told me when I'm writing a book, I told somebody, I said, this is how I rebuild my life. And people always think that means wealth, right? That people were told, I was told only writing a book will only do so much, yet again, constant negativity from everywhere. But I refused to listen to that. Right. So I went through all my writing, and So that place, finally, I moved into where I stay now, which is like for people who've gone through like a treatment facility, I guess, but like I have my own room, I have a key, and I have privacy. And that was when I really began like deconstructing in a thorough way and writing. And, I was consuming other or documentaries about other cults because, I was just blown away by the similarities and the overlap. Even Marshall Applewhite of Heaven's Gate talks like Stephen Lett. I think there's something about their slow, intentional cadence that like creates a hold over people,
Yeah,
and
it makes you stop thinking. You
yeah,
become numb. You're so bored by it that you just
yeah,
whatever and go along with it.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean it's the reason they dumb down a lot of their materials, because if we can make it so simple a child can understand it, then you don't have to think anymore. And thinking is the enemy of a cult.
yeah. And so then I really started writing, and I wanted to tell my story because I know it's brutal, but I didn't want to discuss theology. Like, for me, I didn't even really write it for Ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. I wanted to tell a compelling story, and I thought the narrative of oppression by a cult, and then destruction, and then another cult trying to recruit me and rebelling against that was a compelling narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And so I began writing. At one point, I had a literary agent, but I think her business partner committed suicide, and she died. And so she had told me she needed some time. And then when I went back to check with her down the road, she her website was down, and she never responded to me. But I had already written thousands of words, and it's like I decided I would publish a book. I didn't know how, but I would make that happen. I never had behaved that way in my life before. So I ended up I hired an editor. We had a really great working relationship, and I told them, I said, I'm from the Matrix, so I need you to bridge the gap. Because we use these loaded language terms. Outsiders won't know. And I said, and I want to break the reader's heart. I said, but we're never going to stop. We're going to keep destroying it, right? And when I went through my writing, I picked a poem I had written over those years before each of the 12 chapters. And I hired a lawyer to to do a review of my memoir. I had learned about, like libel and slander, and the whole thing. I hired Sarah Riches to paint the cover.
Oh, I love her. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that big painting, that she mailed it to me. But yeah, that's the cover of my memoir, half as a boy, half now, because her art is beautiful and really speaks to me.
Mhm.
And that was the thing. It was like, wow, I'm like hiring artists and lawyers, and people are taking me seriously. And like, it really became a way of developing myself, So I really am glad that, the literary agent didn't come through. And so I published Mentally Diseased on my 40th birthday.
Oh, really? That's a cool birthday present.
Yeah. And
Wow.
like, I don't think I ever lived in the moment ever until that day. It felt like I grabbed reality and just bent it to my will.
I like to say you can let your story own you, or you can own your story. It sounds like you started to own your story.
Like, because I had hoped for catharsis, but there was no catharsis. I was empowered. And
Yes.
and even at the time, because I didn't have a vehicle, and I was estranged from my son, and I still thought maybe I'll just kill myself after I put this out, right? But then I had a I had people write nice reviews. I had people tell me they connected with what I wrote, even people who weren't Jehovah's Witnesses. I had an ex-Jehovah's Witness tell me that they read my story, and they decided to stop drinking. And it was like, wow, like I've like improved the world.
Just the
you know
power of owning your story.
and like and I even told this person, I said, well, I think you did everything. I don't deserve any credit for that. But it was just like, wow, it was revelatory. It was like,
Mhm.
that was such a cool experience. And then people told me, they were like, oh yeah, we'd like to see more of your writing. So I was like, okay. So I still had, over 100 poems I'd written. um So I decided I'm going to publish 3 books in a year and call it the Apostasy Trilogy. And each book will be a Jehovah's Witness shaming uh, phrase. So 6 months after that, I published Gangrenous Speeches, which is everything else that I had written. And then, I always liked the macabre and the dark, right? So I wanted to write, and I love horror. I love Stephen King. It is my favorite book. I was like, I want to write a horror story about the Antichrist to a hateful God and the destruction of a cruel religion and its leaders. So I wrote Despicable, and it's brutal. It's violent. The violence it's an allegory for leaving a high control group, and it's like, even with the violence, I describe it in a mundane way, kind of, like, because like, that's what it is to be a Jehovah's Witness. You're hearing about sexuality and or local needs, and who did what to who, but it's just it's sane washed and normalized. So yeah, that was really fulfilling to write that, because I feel like it also stands alone as fiction, and it was a step away from, the past as well, like a final chapter on that. So I published that, and then I had people reach out to me asking me, like, I'd like to write a book. Can you give me an advice? And you have vanity presses that'll take advantage of people. So I decided to publish. I discovered this word Zizu. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, wow. No, I think I'm thinking of Xenu. The
Oh, yeah,
Scientology.
yeah.
What's Zizu?
So it's a Finnish term. It's not actually translated to America, but it means like extreme determination and perseverance, even when there is no hope of success or victory.
Mhm.
And
Appreciate that.
I really connected with that phrase. And So I published Zizu, Desolation Before Motivation, and it's a 19-page ebook, and it just kind of goes through my deconstruction and kind of how I, went from, being under a bridge, wondering what am I going to do, to writing books and, pursuing my passion. And I published that on May 18th, which is the day my father died. He told me I wanted to make it free, but Amazon made me charge 99 cents. But
Yeah, you have to charge them.
yeah, but he told me it was important to help people if you could, and I thought, like, because I think a rising tide should lift all ships, and anytime anyone, but especially an ex-Jehovah's Witness, says like they want to do something, I'm like, oh, you should definitely, become uncomfortable. You can't grow and be comfortable at the same time,
Absolutely.
And so after that, it was kind of like, okay, that's put to bed. And so now I've written my son a children's book about critical thought and skepticism. It kind of rhymes like Dr. Seuss. It's called The Boy Who Loved a Monster. And another ex-Jehovah's Witness, Frank Lewis Allen, is going to illustrate it. I have a crowd fund.
Frank's cool. I like Frank.
Yeah, I love Frank, but I have a crowd fund for it, and I'm also saving up. But yeah, so I'm really excited to publish that. And then when I was going through my poems, I was finding these poems about that girl I wrote, and and I messaged her. I said, "Hey, I thought you should know I was in a cult. I didn't know that, but I've left, and I published your poems." And like, she told me she had memorized them, and like we've talked every day for almost 2 years. She's even planning to fly here to meet me
This
in
is the
November.
girl from New Zealand?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
yeah, because they're a day ahead, so I used to call her the girl from the future. So yeah, it's crazy. So many things that I was robbed of have come back, and even she used to say that we were twin flames, and she likes horror as well. So I'm writing her this horror romance about twin flames called 1111. And then I also am writing a book about a man creates a religion declaring himself God as satire, but it gets credulity, turns it into a holy text, and this cult forms around him. So I want to tell the story with it's letters, because he can only talk to himself, and like he feels somewhat compelled to care for them, but he also feels contempt for them because they're so gullible, and even when he tries to tell them it's not real, they won't listen. And so I yet again, that'll be horror, and I'm going to call it the Book of Micah. So
Yes. You named it after yourself. I do like that. You have good.
Well,
I haven't, I haven't read your works, but you have good. You have great titles. I love Gangrenous Speeches. The Book of Micah. That's awesome. Despicable. You have great titles that make these very compelling.
Well, and it's like, I think back, like my mom said, "Oh, I'm the worst one. I'm the worst they've ever heard of." Well, I will make my sacrilege legendary. I will push it. Every day I do at least one thing. I've reached out to countless podcasts, even like, famous people, Joe Rogan, all these people, don't always get a response, but it's like, you have to be in it to, I love the quote by Marcus,
right?
Yeah. I love the quote by Marcus Aurelius: "What stands in the way becomes the way," and consistent effort toward a goal will yield results. And so, I'm working on those. And like, I had so much debt when I was homeless, 30K in debt, but I paid all that off. I worked at the bar. I made so much money after COVID.
Heck yeah, you did. Good for you, man.
I've rebuilt my credit. I've met exjw friends, friends that aren't, and met amazing people online. I've had people from all over the world, Germany, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, send me copies of them holding one of my books one man sent me a picture. He put mentally diseased behind a jw.org sign at the Kingdom Hall. And I've just had these beautiful healing conversations, and it's just been it's been the best time of my life. And I've just been living authentically, and that has drawn the right people and pushed away the ones I don't need, and yeah, it's really just been a beautiful thing. When I spoke in Boston at the Ex-Jehovah Witness convention a few weeks ago, I said, my son isn't being raised in a cult, and I'm getting to do all these things that I want. Like all of that hell was worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't have been any other way. I don't look back, and I'm not happy, that about bad things that happened or people being hurt, but at the same time, I probably wouldn't be who I am now. And I think I'm the best version of myself that, and hopefully I'll keep improving. But yeah,
You took those things and made something out of them.
Yeah. And yeah, it's been great, man. It really has. It's, and hopefully things will just, keep improving for a while. So.
Well, I mean, that's awesome. Definitely will have all of your various books and websites and everything linked in the show notes, not only on the podcast version, but on the YouTube version as well, for anybody who wants to link up or check out a book or whatever the case may be. What do you love about your life today? I mean, obviously you've got this work that you're doing that is amazing. But well, I know we talked even in the back room little interview we did about some things you enjoy about your life today. So maybe you share a little bit about that. Like what do you enjoy today in Micah's world? What's good? If you'd like some extra content, if you'd like to learn more about our guests today, maybe even have an opportunity to connect further with them, you can do so by joining the back room tier at patreon.com/shunned.
Yeah, I mean, I love spending time with my son. He's such a sweet boy, and I don't have to, the constant criticism and critique and fear, a lot of times I just watch him play with, action figures, and, he'll do voices, and just, he's so filled with joy. And I enjoy listening to music. I like watching movies. I like, going on dates and not having any shame. It's like when I finish a book, I like to smoke a cigar. And I don't think anyone enjoys a cigar as much as I do. It's certainly no one around me. I know someone who was shunned for like 25 years for smoking. It's just not that you have to suffer to enjoy things, but when you've suffered immeasurably, you just enjoy the smallest things, yeah, I mean, I think I have more self-control, because you're not being told you're awful all the time, or, trying to apply the fruit of the spirit, I mean, I try and be a kind person, do no harm, but take no shit. And
you don't have to be long suffering anymore, Micah. You can change.
Yeah. Like, when somebody is, I mean, it doesn't happen that often, but I've had people, be nasty to me or cruel or two-faced. And, I'm glad, because it's like, oh, good, I won't talk to you anymore. You're not a person I need. There are billions of people. I'll go find people who are good to me, And yeah, it's, life has become all about possibility. It's like, so I didn't even know if one person would buy my memoir, right? I had people at the bar support me, pass out stickers, and then even I was asked to be part of a crowdfund, right? So I helped with the Witness Underground documentary, and Scott Homan, my friend, he gave me a producer credit. So I got to tell my son, Daddy's a movie producer, Wait, when I went to Boston, I just thought I would speak, right? Well, there was a documentary crew there from Spain doing a documentary about a woman from Spain who's an XJW and the XJW movement. Well, they mic'd me and interviewed me. Now, I don't know if I'll be in it, but I signed a waiver. I gave them my memoir, and they said, they were going to try and get it on Netflix. And, it's like whether or not that happens, I put in the effort and I tried,
Maybe you
like,
showed up.
yeah, and that's what, like, some people think like, I don't want to be famous. I don't even really want to be known. Like the idea of being recognized is horrifying, but I want to put my art out there, and I don't know how to do one without the other. And it's like, let's say maybe I am in this documentary on Netflix. That could be huge exposure for my writing, but that never would have happened if I hadn't, worked to repair my credit. And, I have like $10,000 in credit available to me now. I keep it under, 20%, but like, I was able to charge a flight and, not go into, without necessities, it's like, I feel like I've become an adult and I pursue the things and the people that I want relentlessly, and yeah, it's like, I've said it multiple times, but like, I am alive. I am more alive than I have ever been. And even if I die in 5 minutes, I'll be content because I've been tested and I know who I am, I mean, I still have things I want to do, but I think you should live your life in that way. It doesn't make sense to me, people who don't.
If you want to tell your story on the podcast, buy merch, or get more information, go to shunnedpodcast.com.